Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. What's going on? Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year. Happy 2024. It's gonna be an exciting year, Tim. An
It's been
exciting year.
exciting so far. I mean, I guess there was like a earthquake in Queens.
In Queens. I didn't hear
That's
about
what I'm
the one
hearing.
in
That's
Queens.
our eye in the sky, our reporter on the ground, our feet in the fire. Patricia Blanchard has told me that somewhere near Larry's neighborhood there was an earthquake.
Oh, look at I saw the one. There was like one in Japan or something, but I didn't hear about one in Queens.
Tsunamis coming in, I guess, in Japan, right? Going to take out all their nuclear reactors and stuff.
Again?
Yeah, I guess so.
Another way to restart a nice fresh new year.
Yeah.
But no, so we got a bunch of stuff to talk about tonight, folks. So we got the end of local elections. We want to talk about some of this happened a little while ago. It finally got signed into law by Governor Hochul not too long ago, but the local elections moving to even years, and I don't think this is a good thing. So we're going to talk about that. The New York State Thruway tolls going up.
Yeehaw.
Yeah.
I
And
thought
then
they were do away with those a few years ago.
that was the promise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have a good discussion on that, I'm sure. And then there's a news event in Rochester. Everyone thought there's a terrorist attack, so we're gonna talk about that like briefly. Plus, we got some non-compete stuff that we want to talk about, and maybe more. Of course, you folks listening out there, if there's something that you want to talk about that we don't have listed here, we haven't talked about yet, let us know. And before one of you drops like the Jeffrey Epstein like client list thing, listen, I have not looked at it that closely yet.
It's going to be great. It's going to be epic. Like I said, if it causes one politician to lose a re-election campaign, that's good enough for me. That's a start. I don't even care if they were like one of the dirty, nasty ones. I just like let somebody lose over this. That would be awesome.
But I know someone might bring it up. Just we're not ready for that yet. I'm waiting for more stuff.
Yeah, we want the dirt. We want to get into it. We'll do a deep dive on it next show probably, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, whenever the stuff actually starts coming out, like for real, because like right now, mostly I've seen like a bunch of people claiming to post like the information from it, but it all seems like incomplete and sketchy. So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of waiting to gather that info and see if there's anything to it, right?
Yeah, and we've got a theme and a brand that we work with, and we try to do some local politics, and we we'll do the Epstein client list because we should. But guys, bear with us. We'll do it down the road. We promise. Like it's just we've got some things that we've talked about in the past that have been stalwarts or part of our show, and I think that we want to talk about them.
People are interested in that, but anyway, we'll get to the actual show. We'll head in 3 seconds. 3.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. Happy New Year, everybody. It is Happy New Year to our WYSL fans. Like, thanks for being here. It's an exciting new year. We've got lots of stories. I don't even think, once again, we have so many stories. I don't think we're going to fit them all into the radio show. There's a way to get more Kevin and Tim, though, for you guys. You know what I mean? Just
That's right.
Hint, wink, wink, nod, nod. Come visit us on our show nights, either Tuesday or Wednesday.
That's right. Make sure you listen to Tuesday night or sometimes Wednesday shows. We'll always post on the page what we're doing, and you can participate in the live shows. Leave your comments. join along with us, participate in the discussion. And of course, we have some bonus content too. Oftentimes we talk during breaks and we talk for a bit after the show as well. So if you want more of that, make sure you follow our page, A Free Solution, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify. We have the full podcast there as well. And you can throw in stuff like Steve Becker says, "Go Bills, Happy New Year."
Yeah, go
Yes,
Bills.
go Bills.
Honestly, I was so mad. I was so mad at them, and now they're actually making a season out of it. Like, guys, being, as you all know, long-term Bills fans, right? The issue has always been they've been so disappointing since the Jim Kelly years, and even that we never really got the satisfaction we deserve from having a great quarterback and a great team and a bunch of guys that came together. Like they were still, even back then, playing for less money than the big teams in the league. They were great. They played smash mouth, dirty, hard, knocking football, and it was great. And now maybe another chance.
Maybe.
Last year,
AFC on the Sunday. So I was at the game last Sunday. It was a good time. And I know some people are mad about the Bills and the subsidy and everything, and I don't like it. No, I don't like it, but it's still fun.
No, it's corrupt. It's absolutely corrupt.
Yeah,
we can all agree on that. Like the system that we have, it's silly and corrupt. And we'll talk about some of it tonight, probably.
Yeah, and we'll get to some of that. And ignore the haters on Facebook. Bills, really? Yes, really.
I mean, why not?
That. Yeah. So it's a thing. Like that's fun. And so anyway, speaking of our terrible governor, the end of local elections.
She's horrible, man. Like, guys, you populist Democrats in red areas. I'm gonna let Kevin tell the story because he's so good at that. But I got a message for you, man. She didn't help you. I can tell you that right now.
No, so this isn't just on her. This is also on the New York State Legislature, who had their own incentives for doing this type of thing too. But essentially in New York, as many of you who have voted know, that we often have local elections in odd years, right? So, the presidential election every 4 years, gubernatorial election, in between those presidential elections. And then in the odd years, that's when you have a lot of the town council races, the judge races, the city council races, county led races, things like that, right? And I think this is a good thing. And New York State has decided to move those to even years so that odd years there may not be elections at all, and then even years when there's the justification goes that more people are aware there's an election, therefore there's going to be higher turnout, and people argue, Governor Hochul argues, that there will be more engagement with the local elections. Tim, what do you think of that argument?
Well, okay. Being that we're libertarians, right? The off-year elections are incredibly important to get non-populist voices, I would say. Like, okay, Otsego County, guys, is a Republican county. It's heavily Republican. Now, I think at least in part because of these off-year election cycles, we've been able to get some Democrats. And look, I hate some of the things these guys say. They're absolute lunatics. They want to spend too much money. They virtue signal. But look, the off-year stuff is a good way to get other people and alternate voices into government. What do you think about that? Do I sound crazy?
I mean, that's part of it, right? But like, well, let's dig into her like why that might happen, right? And because part of my like opposition to this of moving these elections to even years is that there's a lot of folks who will show up in the presidential elections and they're going to vote straight ticket down the line. They're there because they understand like what the presidential election is and what their choice is. And to be fair, it's hard to engage constantly in every single race that happens, right? Like even in like the off year elections or even in like the mid-year elections, there's a lot of choices that you have to decide. You have to decide how much of my time is it worth to actually know and understand and invest the time into like, getting what policies might be implemented if I vote for so-and-so. that takes time, right? And so now that's even more compacted with, I've got to understand the presidential election, which everyone wants to talk about and everyone's going to focus on, and then congressional elections and possibly Senate elections, plus the state assembly and state Senate, and now maybe your town council person too. A lot of times people will take the lazy choice and just vote row A all the way, row B all the way, whatever. They're going to let the parties kind of, the hope that the parties like decide for them, right?
Yeah.
What I predict will happen is that local candidates will play into that more. That to the extent that local politics have already become nationalized, I think it's going to get much, much worse moving forward, because they're going to have to play into those national narratives, those national culture war battles in these local elections to gain enough attention to get votes.
Well,
So I think
that's actually an absolute tragedy, right? Like, they're going to be talking about things that they have no impact on in hopes of persuading people to vote for them based all on the emotion of the national scene. Is that
yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's what I'm worried about. And like we already get some of that, right? Which is
No,
like an automatic, like, easy rejection for something. Like, my goodness, I've seen people be like, I'm running for such and such town council and I want to bring socialized healthcare. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm running for, county ledge and I'm going to repeal the SAFE Act.
Nope.
No, you ain't.
Nope, you're not.
Nope, not from there, man. Run for state assembly or something, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
nope.
and like, so I'll see some of that where they'll talk about these national issues, and like there's so much conflation with these state, national, and local politics that like it's hard to break through and address the actual local issues that need to like be brought out and talked about, right? Like, I mean, there's like important stuff going on in my county, like there is in yours, that like people do need to focus on, people do need to talk about. They need to talk about it like at the time when it matters. And I understand that turnout in local elections is abysmally low. Like, I get it.
It is.
It's
It
sad.
is.
Like, it's not great. That said, higher turnout in the local elections is not necessarily the goal in and of itself, right? And I know it's like, I think this point can be easily misunderstood, because I'm not saying like it's a bad thing if more people vote. All I'm saying is it's not necessarily a sign of good civic engagement just because more people vote.
Yeah. What if I say it this way, Kevin? Red areas in the state are going to become redder. Blue areas in the state are going to become bluer, and the dichotomy and the arguing is going to continue. Right? At least
It's gonna get worse.
Yeah. At least now we have some opportunities to get to agreements that are still horrible and spend way too much money, but at least we come to agreements locally. With
Right. Well, like the hope is that like outside of the partisan cacophony of like midterm elections and presidential elections, that people can talk to their neighbors, or something close to that, at least something that feels more neighborly, and try to think of like the tough solutions for your local area that don't necessarily fit in with the national Republican or Democratic narratives, right? So like to me, it's a failure every time like we end up talking about like woke politics in a lot of local elections. Like it ends up getting like it ends up getting a bit frustrating to me, because sometimes like there's important stuff that needs to happen with zoning or local taxes, or yes, like administering like the school board stuff too, which is where it comes up. And like we need to like work through that, and like again have those county specific things work through. And actually John's throwing out saying like there's a big fight in Monroe County election tonight. Yeah, I mean, like it's the Monroe County legislature is trying to decide on who their president's going to be. Again, if you're hearing this on WYSL on Thursday, like stuff is going to have moved since I talked about this. But basically there's folks trying to form a coalition between Democrats and Republicans to select the president, but there's a Democratic majority, and some Democrats feel that they should have a president selected just from the majority, right? And then there's issues over like, how much do you fund housing? How much do you fund, social services that are beyond like the New York State mandates? What do you do with taxes? Does the county executive want to lower taxes more? Like that sort of thing, right? And does the legislature go along with that? So there's these different issues that like do need to be hashed out on the local level. But again, if it comes down to like just rah red tribe, blue tribe stuff, like, which I mean, frankly, some of it already is, but I think it's going to get worse. Like,
real local issues are going to get lost, Kevin, in that thoughtful, right?
Exactly. They're going to get lost in that. And like the important stuff that does need to be addressed, there's going to be further deference of power higher up is what I think is going to be happen, because it's just going to be more. And we already get a lot of this too on like there's that the kind of like trap that a lot of like schools get into and city governments and county governments get into. Sometimes they're mandated to, but like where they'll get these like grants from like the federal government, and suddenly they're like trapped into complying with like onerous, like you know, compliance issues with these grants, and it ends up costing them like almost as much money to comply. And they're constantly chasing these new things from the federal government, complying with more and more rules from the federal or state government, and you end up mixing the two in a way that I don't think is good for a federalized republic.
Yeah, I mean, the argument's always been presented as like local communities have a certain autonomy to reject these prescriptions that are handed down from the government. But once they take that cash, they enter into an agreement for that grant money, and they throw their Article 9 rights right out the window when they put that money in their friends' pockets.
Right. And sometimes that, we've talked about this before, sometimes that trade-off's worth it. Sometimes it's not, though. And
most of the time it looks awful, it looks corrupt, and it is corrupt. Okay. It's like systems of our local city board chasing down money for a big developer to redevelop downtown Oneonta when they still haven't come up with the right answer. They still haven't fixed the parking on Main Street. And now they still haven't fixed the parking garage, which is falling into the ground. So it's like, you guys are missing the point. Great.
Right.
That you
I mean, it's so like if you know,
you're
like
making Cluggo rich. Okay. Like you're making them rich. So good.
Right. If you do things like you build infrastructure for infrastructure's sake, and you're like, but we didn't really pay for it, but you're on the hook for the maintenance, and like you need to either beg for more money in, 15, 20 years, or you need to raise taxes to be able to pay for this thing that you built. Like it's not a lot. Unfortunately, it's a lot of local governments who don't think in a long-term sustainable way. And again, that's in addition to some of the other like kind of tribalism that I think is emerging even more strongly, like national tribalism. There's always been like kind of local tribalism, like it's always kind of a thing, but like the national tribalism that I think is unhealthy, how that stuff is permeated every single aspect of our lives. And I do want to like take this discussion to a place of like, well, like what do we do about it, right? And again, does this fundamentally fix the problem that Governor Hochul and the supporters of this bill talk about? Is like, does this increase civic engagement? Again, no. And unfortunately, the hard work isn't going to come from like, let's just tweak this a little law. Even if we went back to this, we did have a problem with engagement in local elections. And the problem is that like we got to just pay attention to it, right? Which then takes time. That's time away from your family. That's time away from your hobbies. That's time away from work sometimes. So, can you take the time to go to a county ledge meeting?
When your entire existence is being devalued by Bidenomics, you're busier than you used to be. So taking extra interest is actually even more challenging now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to work in my shots at Bidenomics and national issues always.
We're doing better than we ever have before, Tim. Don't worry. That's what the numbers say.
That's what he said. So I guess him and Paul Krugman must be experiencing life slightly differently than I am. I wonder why.
Who knows? Just not working hard enough, Tim.
Okay. Seems like all right. That's one possibility. It's not the one I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with $34 trillion in debt, Kevin.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. That's a new high score that we got.
Like a video game. I just won the video game. We just hit, guys. We did. As a matter of fact, a news article came across right before the show. $34 trillion. Congratulations, United States of America. You have hit a record debt that at no point, all it does is encourage devaluation and theft. And at no point are we ever going to pay that money back. And the fiat currency is a train wreck. And at some point, Kevin, the chickens are going to have to come home to roost, don't you think?
Eventually.
Like, I'm not crazy. Like something's got to go. Like inflation won't go away for long. Something like that. It's going to be devastating, and then we're going to be stuck with Javier Milei in the United States, which may not be a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, we don't want things to get that broken where like what we, need a guy like that. But unfortunately, it might come down to it.
I know. I was explaining this to my mom because she went from a kind of a liberal Democrat to a Trump fan. And I'm like, look, you guys listen to what we say. You nod a lot when we're talking about fiscal policy, and then you continue to vote the same way. And now look, a decade of 300% inflation in Argentina, and finally they elect a libertarian who is going to like face challenges to be successful because the economy is so broken, right? Like
Right.
people are abused. They have Stockholm syndrome. They have violence disorders. Like it's going to be
the longer you let the problem go on, the harder it's going to be to fix, right? You have fewer resources, fewer tools. The cuts are going to have to be deeper, tougher, affect more people. So yeah, the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to be, unfortunately. And right now we don't have any major parties where that's the number one issue.
No. Always the number one issue is which war? Which war should we fight today? That's the number one issue. Then the number two issue is how do we grow the GDP through inflation and building bombs? That's the number two issue. So Happy New Year.
We're growing the economy, Tim. That's really what's important. And
it's numbers, Kevin. The numbers look good. They're bigger than they were last year.
Right. That is something like just you can. I'm going to tie this back to our previous topic. Like you can set a target, right? Like you can set you can optimize towards like any given metric, right? Like, companies will do this like towards like stock prices, or they'll do it towards like profitability, or they'll do it towards like some weird internal metric that they'll figure out. US government like will do it towards GDP, which again is important. It's definitely a measure that like impacts quality of life for folks, but it is not the only thing. I recognize it's not the only thing. And if you're growing GDP, but also we're growing our level of debt relative to GDP, we're in for a long-term problem. And then I'm tying it back to the other thing. It's same thing with, okay, sure, we can optimize towards more people are voting in local elections. Okay. But have we engage people better? Do people understand local issues more? Are people more likely to care about improvements to the community, to whether or not we need to build a new road or pay for a new school, or change regulations to make it easier to build those things? Whatever it is, like, are people actually engaged more, or are they just showing up more? Are we optimizing towards the wrong metric in this situation and many others?
That's a fantastic point. People don't understand metrics. And it does take a little different level of involvement, right? To get involved in the metrics of a grant that's going to cost you $500,000 for the $100,000 that they give you, right? It's I don't know. Like everybody wants to. I guess I get stuck on that. I want to say they want a virtue signal, but they want to say, "Hey, look at this great thing that we did."
I mean, here's a big shiny thing. Like it's basically free money for us. Like that feels good. And then like you don't think about how the big shiny thing wasn't actually paid for, and it's the next person's problem.
Yeah,
or your problem, baby. All right. Anyway, we got to head to break now. Thanks again for joining us here on WSL on A Free Solution. We're gonna be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Actually, I do want to bring up this comment from Patricia quick. Whose economy is growing, not the workers. The interesting part is like for workers, for like the like bottom 20th percentile, they actually have had a big improvement over the last few years. Like statistically, it's like the middle class and like the professional class that have like declined. But like workers, like the bottom 20% actually gone up in terms of like standard of living.
Now, do you think they kept ahead? They outpaced inflation, and the things that low-end workers are really after is, an improvement in the quality of food and an improvement in the quality of their home, and like, so I don't know that they outpaced inflation. Even
no, it's still they did actually.
Okay.
Now, did they like is how substantial of an improvement is that? Like, because we're talking about like percentages, like of
Sure.
increase, right? Like they did have real wage growth, but like, are you able to like compare yourself effectively to someone who's like solidly in the middle class? Still no, right? Like it's
No,
still it
but
hasn't caught up.
there's funny metrics when they calculate the inflation rate and say that there was growth in real wages, Kevin. So as you know, we've criticized the fact that core inflation or food, energy, and transportation are not necessarily included in the actual inflation calculation. So I wonder again that it sure real wages grew on some level against certain metrics, but the metrics are incomplete and they're deliberately incomplete. So I wonder, I think people are feeling a lot of pain that it's hard to communicate, you know?
Oh, sure, right, and some of that, like against inflation, things like that, right? And if you're gaining a bit more in wealth, but like most of that feels like it's going towards just buying the same level of food. Well, okay,
Yeah.
but listen, there was some growth there. Just it
Might be hard,
actually like the what's that?
might be hard to see, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's not always real to folks. And again, everyone's like, and that's looking at an aggregate, right? Like, so some individual situations aren't better. A lot of individual situations aren't better. And again, for like the middle class, a lot of things are kind of flat.
yeah. Now, and to go back to, I agree, John. John saying players avoid New York due to tax structure. That is absolutely right. We have the highest or the second highest athlete tax in the country, and we are Buffalo Bills is a smaller market, so that tax structure definitely impacts not so much our top players, but when we get into the offensive line and the backups for the offensive line, and perhaps our kickers and our secondary teams, like we're not getting the same level of quality that say Kansas City is, Denver, whatever. Like it's taxes are killing the Buffalo Bills, but at least we're going to help them build the stadium. There you
Yep.
go.
Oh, we're gonna subsidize them somehow. That's
Yeah.
That's how we do our part, Tim. Taxes got to go somewhere. John threw out this other thing too. There needs to be a test to vote.
You've kind of been in favor of that in the past when we've had
Yeah,
this.
like I would say I'm in favor of it, except for the fact I know how historically that's gone horribly wrong. Right? Like that's kind of my position on it. Is like it the test. We the United States tried to do this. The South tried to do this in the aftermath of the Civil War after the 15th Amendment, and they made tests explicitly to try to exclude the freed slaves from being able to vote. And so there's no reason to think that like someone else couldn't make a nefarious version of the test. Maybe we could make a perfectly neutral, fine version of the test or the citizenship test, something like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
I said that like because I get that sentiment though, because sometimes like and this kind of relates to our previous discussion. Sometimes people are going in, they have no idea what they're voting for, no idea who they're voting for. Like, my goodness, like in Monroe County, the number of people who voted for the Supreme Court judge who
Didn't want the job.
didn't want the job. She like was not from the area. She's from Long Island. She just put on the ballot so she could get off another ballot. Like how many people were really like protesting? Like they just didn't like the Republican candidates. And they're like, yeah, we need a Democrat in. How many people really thought that? How many other people were just like, well, I guess I always vote Democrat. So
Yeah.
And
I
like
mean,
part of me's like, man, like if you have no idea what position you're voting on, like part of me is like, man, just don't. And I don't want to test for that. I'm just saying like maybe don't. Maybe you could be putting someone stupid in office. And I'm not calling this woman stupid, but there are a lot of cases where people win because like their name is like higher in alphabetical order.
yeah. Yeah.
Something goofy like that, or just more memorable or whatever. And
Yeah. Happy local property tax assessment day. I want everyone to know that your local property taxes are now due and payable in New York State as of January 1st. Good luck with that. Remember, if you don't pay, they will come and take everything you own and leave you homeless.
yeah, you don't really own that. You don't really own that. And my property taxes, by the way, they almost doubled the value of my property assessed.
Oh my God. So you're
no improvements to the property. It's not like I did anything.
you have a podcast room, bud. Like that's worth $1 million.
I run a podcast out of my unfurnished attic. That's at least 40 grand to my house.
Yeah.
Clearly. Nope, that's great. So a bunch of folks unfortunately are gonna end up hurting. Some of the folks on the edge might end up losing their homes because of it.
Yeah. We may get to some news about that. There's an interesting movement and some interesting rulings that afoot. So we may get to that today. If not, we'll definitely talk about it in another show. But we should probably get back at it, right?
Yeah, no, let's get back to it. We'll go back in 10 seconds. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and we are doing our very best to educate people about taxation being theft. And during our off break, guys, I just wanted to wish you like a happy property tax assessment day. As of the first of the year in New York State, all of your local property taxes are due and payable. And I just want to remind everyone, if you don't pay them, they will take everything you own and leave you homeless.
Yeah, no, it's true. You can have your home seized over this type of stuff, and so stinks for those folks who are right on the edge. This could be a thing that put them over. A lot of folks in my neighborhood, including me, had their property values assessed property value nearly double. Even if they didn't make any improvements to their home, didn't do anything, they just their property taxes are about to go way up.
That's brutal. It's brutal. And like again, I think we can emphasize the people. I'd like to emphasize people on the edge, people that are not financially well off, but are getting by, right? Like they're making a life in New York State, and all of a sudden they've owned a home. Perhaps it was handed to them. Perhaps they perhaps are experiencing an illness now, right? Like perhaps they're experiencing a job change. Perhaps, guys, their business left New York State. All of these amazing things can happen, and they were just barely getting by. And the greed of your local government, they care not. They will raise your taxes, and that's what their goal is, to find a way to raise more money, because they're in a financial quandary thanks to COVID, thanks to whatever else.
So I'll say two things about it. One, remember you can challenge your tax assessment. Like there's a window for being able to do that. Yeah, it's doesn't always work, but you can challenge it.
Sure, and you should. And you should.
And then the other thing is that like they will say it's objective. They'll say like if you ever like go to local politicians and say like, well, this is unfair. Why are all of our property assessed values going up and therefore our taxes are going up? They will say, well, it's pegged to the local home price and home sales and blah 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 and additions, all this stuff. And so like they will say that's dictated elsewhere, and that their only recourse is to lower taxes. To which you respond, okay, then do that. Lower the taxes then.
Yeah, lower taxes.
Lower the taxes so people can stay in their homes. Yes. Yeah,
they're shocked when you say that, because they are petty tyrants in the government, are of the belief that we owe them, that they built this, that they offer us this opportunity to exist. And I get very frustrated by that mindset. My opinion has always been that they are here to serve us, and they are doing a horrible job. I get it. Like I'm a contrarian, grumpy old dude, but that's a reality. And look, guys, I can remember a time in my life where it was better, where they weren't actively seizing people's property, and they weren't using property seizure as a revenue source. And again, for a future show, we've got some stuff, but I think we want to talk about.
Yes. This was kind of a tangent a bit.
Yes.
But we're going to talk about Thruway, right?
Yes.
Yeah. About the Thruway toll hike, the cost of riding on the Thruway going up, Tim. And hat tip to John, friend on Facebook, for reminding us that this was a thing that was happening. So yeah, Tim, how excited are you that the throughway cost is going to be higher?
Well, arguably, they did a great thing last year that makes me. They were literally threatening to raise the toll rate 75%, and I think they kept it under. I don't know. I think it was under 10% or 15%.
It was like 5. It was like 5%. So it's not.
Yeah, so
It ended up not being like.
God bless them.
You know, 8.6 cents per mile.
So look,
in
it's
2027.
expensive. There was a promise when they built the throughways and the bridges that they would tax them or toll them for a limited period of time until that infrastructure improvement was paid off. It has now become a major source of revenue for New York State that they are never, ever, ever going to let go of. And sure, it only went up a little bit. Well, I mean, 8% is actually kind of substantial. But government doesn't keep its promises, Kevin. I guess that's where I
No, that is something to keep in mind. Whenever someone's like, well, eventually this thing will be free. No, it will not. It will not be free. Do not believe them, because like it could never be. Like that was a promise that they never could keep because someone was always going to have to pay for it, right? And the thing about like our roads, including the throughway, is like you can pay for it one of two ways. Either you can pay for it by paying for it when you use it, or you can pay for it through other taxes collected, either a gas tax or some other way of collecting tax to pay for roads, right?
Sure.
Like that stuff has to be paid for. So the New York State Thruway toll is one of the few things that like I'm okay with. Now, I don't want people making a bunch of money off of it. What's that?
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's a use tax, right? And it's like,
tax.
I don't have to use it if I don't want to.
Yeah.
So
and Facebook user chimed in, I will absolutely avoid the Thruway.
Do it.
Cool, man. That's your right. Like, that's great. Like, because that's you don't have to use it. Like, there's no one making me use the Thruway. There are other ways around. And occasionally, if there's a big, accident on the Thruway or something, I will go around. Like, I'll take another route.
Even if I want a cheap cup of coffee, I'll jump off the Thruway and get on 20 for a while. You know what I mean? Like it's
those stupid rest stops.
Yeah. I mean,
I'd be so angry every time I go on them.
You're still mad about the Chick-fil-A being closed on Sundays, but I get it.
I'm mad about all of it. I'm mad about that. Like, going to the Clarence rest stop before I go to the Bills game. There's still only like 4 urinals in there. Like every Bills fan east of Buffalo is trying to stop in that same dang rest stop to go pee at the same time. Of course it's backed up. Of course it is. There's only 4 urinals. What were they thinking?
You're saving the environment by having smaller rest stops, Kevin. That's the thing. And
with like that are all windows, for goodness sakes.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
No, but anyway, the point of it is like I'm not all that mad about tolls. Like, I mean, like it can get ridiculous, right? Like, if tolls are used as a way to just collect revenue, and we can argue about this in terms of the New York State Thruway system, which is like only quasi state run. It's like technically a private organization that's chartered by the state, but and then some of the revenue goes to the state. But it's what should happen in theory is that the toll should pay for the cost of like maintaining the road, right? It's a high traffic, high volume road. Like it's going to take some money to like, fix patches of the road, fix bridges, things like that. Sure. Okay, the toll should pay for that thing. And then if it's just the people using the thing that are paying for it, then great. That's fine. I think that's an all right way to do it. In fact, like more government services like generally should work that way, like most of the time. Is that
if they're offering a good product, people would pay for it. You know what I mean? Like they would like you're saying, you're basically okay with the existence of the tolls on the Thruway. You realize that you have a choice, that if you don't want to pay the toll, you can just travel down 20. You can travel down. There's a couple roads that run parallel to it. 5 runs parallel to it. 20 runs parallel to it for a ways. So you have options. And look, guys, there's interesting things to see once you get off the Thruway. Like if you're in a hurry, sure, the Thruway is the best way to go. But if you just want to wander, it's kind of a better experience. I wander off the Thruway all the time.
Yeah, no, it's great to do. Like, I mean, and sometimes, like, I mean, you got to go a bit out of the way, but like, if you can like drive up along the lakes and stuff, like, it's a good time. I mean, obviously, you got to be able to do that and have the time to do that. And it's going to cost you just as much, honestly, because you're going to be using more gas probably. But
Yeah. I just want to point out I have a connection to the director of the New York State Thruway. I used to manage a bar in Syracuse called Rosie O'Grady's, and Matthew Driscoll, who is now the director of the New York State Thruway Authority, owned Rosie O'Grady's, and him and I used to have to work together like on the weekends and stuff like that when it was busy. And he helped teach me how
no
to cook.
kidding.
Actually, he's a real look, guys. He's a Democrat. You guys know that I'm not particularly fond of Democrat posses, but Matthew Driscoll is an exceptional human being and will always be an okay guy in my book. Like, period. Like, if he even remembers me, and he may not. Like, but we've had conversations. Like, he was going to run for governor. He was touted as perhaps the upstate New York, lieutenant governor before. I think it was as an against Cuomo, or then it was possibly the lieutenant governor for Cuomo before they picked
That being
Cuomo.
Duffy. Well,
And
Duffy first.
oh, Duffy, right? But then they just gave him a pretty cool job instead of allowing him to threaten their election integrity.
go.
He would have been a big contender. He was very popular. He was the mayor of Syracuse. And like I said, he's really, really, really genuinely a nice guy. Like, regardless of the fact that he's a Democrat, regardless.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I don't know. I'll take your word for it. I'm sure he's good. There's some like decent enough like practical Democrats out there that I can agree with.
Yeah.
Patricia, it will never be a freeway. It will always be a tollway. Yeah, that will. Like the thruway's never going to be free. Like they never really had a plan to pay for it. It was never. Nothing's free. And that's the thing. Like I always think that like in terms of like I don't get mad at, and I know some people like get grouchy about this, but I don't get mad at like parking meters in a lot of places either, as long as they're not like, the point of those isn't just to raise revenue. It's to like, okay, we need to pay for street maintenance, so the parking meters help us pay for street maintenance. Okay, yeah, I get it. Like you gotta pay for street maintenance in an area, charge for parking. That's a way to do it. Fair enough. As long as it's not, the point isn't extraction, it's maintenance. And there should be more government services that are set up that way. Which I know, like people got mad at Bill Weld for saying that, actually, of all things, because that was his
like
philosophy.
One of his best policies. Like,
yeah,
he ended up voting for Hillary Clinton, so
So he's a good friend. Yeah. No, yeah. There's a lot of ways in which Bill Weld was terrible, but like one of the things he happened to be right about is like when he would like talk about like the nuts and bolts of how he made like Massachusetts government like slightly better. Like that was one of the things.
Yes.
Yeah. That was one of the things he talked about. It's like, okay, like, well, we should have fees associated with things because like people who are using these services should pay for these services instead of just distributing the cost to everybody. Especially if it's something that's like a highway, which I think is totally fair.
Yeah, look, they did away with the toll booth system too. Like they have and look, I'm not one of those guys that's paranoid about giving up all my information. Like if I'm driving up to Albany, I don't care that the government knows I'm driving up to Albany, and it's way faster, way more convenient, and the roads are way safer. The toll booths themselves were absolute hazards. So.
They kind of were. People would like always cut lanes and stuff like so much.
And a waste of gas, a waste of economic resources. We were literally killing the environment with those things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love it when I do that, but
yeah, you're just going down to like we'll reduce our carbon and
we save carbon every day now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Doing your part, Tim.
Yep.
No, I mean I agree. Like I was using the Easy Pass things forever, so like I wasn't really mad about that either.
Now you can go cash like 55 where the toll booths were. You don't even have to slow down.
I just remember doing that stuff like in high school, and like it's like me and my 4 friends, like, all right, who has change? All right, like come on, like gather dollar bills, gather quarters, and we're all trying to like just pull stuff together to pay for change so we could drive to the like state fair or something.
Yeah, you wasted hours of your life.
But yeah, and Steve threw this out too. Like the rest stop construction was 30-year contract. Yeah, no, it's that really makes sense. It's a bad way to do it. They should have known better, and no, they messed that one up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think that was kind of a long contract for that stuff for like restaurants being there, like Chick-fil-A, which again, I like whatever. I'm not like making a comment on the food or anything else. I'm annoyed they're not open on
I know,
Sundays.
because if you were to attack their food, Kevin, I would feel obligated to defend their food. I understand that they're closed on Sundays, but their food is at the waffle
which is
fry.
fine. Which is fine. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with being closed on Sundays. I get it. Like you want your workers to have a day off. You want them to have the Sabbath off. It's totally reasonable. But I also want someone to stop on Sundays. And there are plenty of other like folks who are happy to serve me on Sundays.
I totally get it, but it's so funny. I mean, this conversation that we have about Chick-fil-A is very funny to me. I enjoy it.
Just totally unnecessary. Should have known better. Anyway, so I don't know that I have all that much more to say on throughways or tolls and fees, but like that's where I sort of get like if we had anarchy, you'd have to pay for the roads too. I'm just saying, like all the libertarians out there who are like, I don't want to pay for it. Like, no, like a private company be charging you too. Like you got to pay for stuff somehow. No free riders.
You know, that's a reality, right? Like, sure, you could have a community road where if not everyone pays, you could still maintain the road as long as enough people pay.
Yeah.
And sure, like I'd love to have the equipment in my front yard to take care of my local road and keep it free from snow and stuff like that, and make a few bucks for my neighbors, from my neighbors, and for my neighbors, and I would give them good service. But that's not where we're at. So there's always going to be an expense. Always.
Yeah, it's you're gonna have to pay for it somehow, probably, just because it's like it's not scalable for individuals to just take care of their little patches of road. Like you're either gonna be paying the government or some company to do it.
Petty tyrants are free riders, Alice. You're correct. Like a lot of the employees in government are free riders. I agree with that.
That's true. That's true. And that is a great point to end on. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We have one more segment right after this. Talk to you soon. With the nice beer can open.
I tried to time it up perfect so that it went out. So you couldn't really edit it out and everybody heard it.
Yeah, right there at the end. All right. So we got one more segment to go. And I don't know. Which thing do we want to talk about? The non-compete? We want to talk about the John on YouTube. We addressed this at the beginning. We did. John on YouTube says, any interest in the Epstein client list coming out?
Minimal. We're going to do a deeper dive on it. Like at the moment, like my hopes are, John, always that someone loses their seat because we reelect our Congress people at a 92% rate. And if they lose their seat because of an affiliation or an association with the Epstein client list, I think that's great. That's a good step in the right direction. I would love to see like some real, because we know there's some real creeps in government. Bob Menendez et al. But I'd like to see some more people where we get some real dirt on them. I'm skeptical that we're going to get that.
No, I think a lot of folks are going to like kind of talk their way out of it too. It's like Donald
RFK.
Trump. Yeah, RFK. Yeah, he's already like talked about it. Donald Trump was already like he was on one of the lists, but he's like, oh no, like we were just going to Palm Springs,
Yeah, I was hitting him up for money, like for real. Yeah. Like, I was on his flights. He was going to give me money for my foundation.
Yeah, that's so there's going to be a lot of that. And then so we'll have to sort through like, are we just going to lay into guilt by association? Are we going to try to say like, were they actually doing something? Yeah. Tim's like, yes, absolutely. Anyone who hung out with that guy deserves whatever they get.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the point is, John. Yeah. We'll probably talk about it eventually. It's as a lot of stuff's kind of still coming out, and I don't know.
Kevin's way more patient than I am. And on this subject, I absolutely agree with him because I would just fly off the handle and it would be wrong about everything. So it's good. It's good.
Yeah. This guy get some time to figure out what's going on and see if there's anything there. And lots of smart people are pouring over it too. So I'm going to see what they have to say, and And as long as someone doesn't drop us a fat check to not talk about it, we're probably going to talk about it. But
So, I
so
mean,
get those checks ready, folks, and we'll
I'm just saying.
just
I'm just saying, Mark Molinaro, if your name's on that list and you don't want me talking about it, I am corruptible. We're not on the radio part, right?
No, we're not on the radio part.
Right.
This is the podcast part.
Woo! All right, because that was just a joke for you guys, our cool audience, and WSL audience is cool as well. Don't get me wrong; it's just
cool, but
yeah,
we're joking.
Yeah.
If someone ever wrote me a check, I was like, you can't talk about this story, I would wave that check in front of like this show and be like, look, someone told me not to talk about this.
That would be awesome.
I will never get like hush money ever.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Excuse me, guys.
Yeah.
So terrorist attack in Rochester, or not, honestly, the terrorist attack has a slightly more appeal right now to me. The way my
we'll talk about that. Probably not for the whole segment either, because
we probably could do both, right? The non-compete thing's pretty cut and dried, and we've talked about it in depth in the past.
Yeah, we'll do a little bit both. And then other folks besides the Epstein client list, do you have any other ideas throw them out there too?
The Seinfeld law, we got to talk about that real quick too, because our eyes what eye in the sky, our feet on the ground, our local reporter Patricia Blanchard gave us a couple leads, so we got to talk about the Seinfeld law.
All right, we'll talk about Seinfeld law too. We'll make sure we get to all of it. All right, we're gonna head back in 5, 4. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson here today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and we've of course have even guys, when you think we've covered everything that we can cover when it comes to Kathy Hochul, we have one more, just one more thing.
One more. So we'll talk about she vetoed a law of all things for some reason. Didn't trust her legislature on this one. Non-compete agreements. New York State was fixing to ban those, and Kathy Hochul said that business leaders brought her concerns, and she decided to veto them. And Tim, what are your thoughts on that? Well, is this a good thing? Was Kathy Hochul right to listen to business leaders in this case?
I think that I'm going to give you some credit once again for making a valid point to me about professional level people signing a non-compete can generally, to sign that non-compete, can negotiate for extra benefits, extra money, or extra severance, right? Where the non-competes don't work and they can still be written are for low-wage workers in New York State, okay? Now, New York State shook down Papa John's, the sandwich king, monopoly king, to make them stop making pizza?
Jimmy John's, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay, sorry. Dang it, because it would have been better if I didn't get corrected there. But they did shake down Jimmy John's to force them to stop making their entry-level employees sign non-competes. Could you imagine going to work for Jimmy John's and having to sign a non-compete, and then going to work for your mom at her family store, and they come in and bust you, here's your non-compete, you owe us $100,000. You know what I mean?
Taking trade secrets.
Yeah, it's so anyways, the non-compete has value to the professional class. There are trade secrets in law firms. There are trade secrets in manufacturing. There's probably trade secrets in the financial services industry that on some level deserve to be protected if you're using proprietary technology. Do you think I'm on the right track, Kevin?
Yeah. So generally, I am somewhat okay with non-competes, although a lot of non-competes as they're written in New York State aren't really as enforceable as employers think they are. If you have to sign one, go talk to a lawyer. I'm not giving you legal advice here, just as a general understanding of how non-competes work, because I've had to sign them for various things before. It's they are limited in what they can prevent you from doing, because you can't go and get they can't prevent you from getting employment in the same industry, but oftentimes what they can do is like prevent you from pulling over like specific trade secrets, right? Like trade processes or clients, right? Like you
Right.
can't go to a competing, like in my case, I work for like a marketing agency. I can't go to a competing agency and then call up my current clients, but hey, come over here instead, right? Like, and that's something that would probably be enforceable. There's a time, it
Sure.
has to be time limited on it. They can't do it like indefinitely, but I can't take the knowledge that I have from working with a client and then bring it over somewhere else or to my own company immediately
Right.
afterwards.
On some level, that feels fair to me, especially if you're making a good living and you're in a competitive market,
Yeah.
particularly like advertising. I could see where that would be an
Yeah,
issue.
advertising, legal areas, and like some other companies that have like similar products too, and what should happen is if you're in a position to sign like non-compete agreements, like you should be kind of like advanced enough in your career and be getting compensated well enough where like you're willing to like do that. You're willing to sign that non-compete because like you're going to be able to get a new job elsewhere. You're going to be able to apply your skills to still make money after this. It should not be to what we talked about earlier for like the person working at Jimmy John's or the person working at Annie Ann's or the person working at Subway, whatever, like
Right.
it's not, it really shouldn't be for that type of stuff, like low wage employees. Like it's bizarre to try to hold them to that standard and to put intimidating language in the contracts that makes it seem like they can't go work at other places when in fact they probably can without any issue. No one's going to
Yeah.
enforce that.
One of the things that bothers me is when we have laws that are non-specific enough that the government chooses not to enforce them or to enforce them at their will. That to me is a source of tyranny. So the way that the non-compete kind of law is working in New York State right now is they can enforce it and then they can choose not to enforce it, and they can literally shake down a Jimmy John's for trying to get people to sign a non-compete. And I think that that's problematic. It's something that I really don't like. Like,
Right,
let's
yeah,
have some
which ends
clarity
up
in the
being
law.
arbitrary.
What's that?
Ends up feeling a bit more arbitrary.
Yeah, it's arbitrary, it's capricious, and it's a little bit tyrannical in a way. So let's have some non-lazy legislatures take care of this problem once and for all. Like, get the laws written, get them written like based on a total income or what, however you want to do it, but get it consistent and take care of the little people and let people that are making a lot of money negotiate their own contracts. Like
Yeah.
that's fine. I get it.
So you could do that, and I'm gonna make a slight counterpoint to this, and I'm gonna start with by reading a comment from a Shelly on YouTube. It says a bartender will always be followed to another bar. People just know what they risk when they get rid of them. A bartender without a following isn't a good bartender, right?
Yeah,
And so a bar with a good bartender might compensate that bartender a bit better too to make sure that they want to stay, right?
sure.
I
They
mean,
might
there's
let
also
them,
like tips and stuff like that too. I
yeah,
know it's a
give
whole
away
thing.
more booze. They might let them have a little like more free drink kind of allowance if they
But yeah,
go.
there's different perks that you can get to get people to stay, right? And
Mhm.
so in states like California, like non-competes are illegal there. And so there's a lot of folks who go back and forth between all these like tech companies because like there's no way for companies to legally enforce non-competes at the same level that you have in other states. So
Yeah,
like it's easy for you to go get more money in some ways by going to other firms. And then like you as a firm have to decide like, okay, what am I going to do to keep this person to make sure they stay here and stay loyal and have advancement opportunities? So like there's some pros to banning non-competes in like certain industries.
sure.
I get it. But it also just depends on, again, like you as the employee, how can you negotiate that to your advantage?
Yeah, and
And
I could see a tech company being like leaving California because they can't ask for a non-compete from their employees, right? Like
yeah,
that's a really bad deal. A tech company can develop a new algorithm that actually would make them millions of dollars, and if everybody or someone leaves has access to that proprietary technology, like
yeah.
oh,
And California says like that's where innovation comes from, because then you're not locked in. You could just
yeah,
be like, I mean, there are still like trade secret type of stuff. And again, when you sign these contracts at certain places, like it might be like anything you develop for us, we own, right? So you can't just go and take that thing and just like start your own business with it. Like that's still part of it. So yeah, like again, it's an interesting thing. I don't know how I feel about this law specifically,
Yeah.
but anyway, I go ahead.
It's probably not that big of a deal, really, overall. I don't think that I do remember having to sign a non-compete when I went to work for PNC back, like, I don't know, 35, 40 years ago. But like, could they really prevent me from going to work at the Great American? I don't think so. Would they have
No,
enforced
probably
it?
not.
I wasn't scared that they were going to enforce it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, so a lot of times like it's really not enforceable in most situations. But again, don't go talk to like a lawyer about it. Go like find some other sources for it. But a lot of situations it's really not that enforceable.
So look, man, I think we covered it. I do want to get in this story about a terrorist attack, a possible terrorist attack in
Yeah.
Rochester, New York. I think it's a big deal. I, of course, have a take on it that's very consistent with many things, but I'd like to turn it over to you to get a quick rundown of the story.
Well, I mean, it's this is one of those things where like the story isn't even necessarily. I mean, the story itself is like pretty wild, right? Like of what we know, and again, if you're listening to this on WYSL on Thursday evening, this is Tuesday evening. Stuff is probably going to change because a lot of stuff has changed since when it happened, right? But basically, there's like an SUV going down West Ridge Road out in front of the Kodak Theater. The SUV was on fire. The SUV hit I think it was a Lyft, like a Mitsubishi. That was a Lyft driver. The guy came running out like on fire and everything too. The whole car was filled with gas canisters for some reason. Again, as a Tuesday night, they're saying there's a dude named Michael Avery from Syracuse. And they don't know what it is, but they thought this might be a terrorist attack, like pretty reasonably so, because it seemed like he might have been trying to hit pedestrians, and he had a SUV full of like gasoline for some reason.
Sure.
But the interesting part about the story is also like that, like stuff keeps changing because everyone wants to have their hot takes about it.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
Like,
Yeah.
because they're like New York Post, like, oh, there's a suicide note, and the police are like, nope, there wasn't a suicide note, there wasn't a thing. And like, oh, this is definitely a terrorist attack, and now they're like, maybe it is, but like we don't know yet. Like maybe slow down a bit on this.
Yeah. I caught an article on CNN that's basically saying they found no manifesto, they found no journal, they found no suicide note. What I want to point out, Kevin, is that this is a stressful time of year. That relationships dissolve, mental illness gets exacerbated, you lose jobs, businesses change. Like, this is an incredibly stressful time of year. Now, I'm not excusing this guy's behavior at all. Like, what he did is awful and horrible, but most likely not some sort of white supremacist, domestic terrorist, not some, Muslim, like jihadist. It's not that situation. It's a death of despair. And that's what I'm presuming. Okay. That's what I'm presuming from what I've read so far. And as always, when it comes to deaths of despair and the issues of what the government's done to the monetary supply, and I know, like, I want people to understand that these things are real, that they have real effects, long-term effects on our society that we are just beginning to account for. Like, to recover from the COVID fiasco, the government's response to COVID, it adds to all of the things that I'm talking about, these moments of despair in someone's life, being broke, and all of those things. We're still feeling the effects of it. And maybe it's a reach, and maybe I'm going too directly to one of my favorite topics, but I feel comfortable saying it, and I'd appreciate pushback. It's okay. You know what I mean?
No, I mean that's what it could be. It could be, unfortunately, a death of despair type of thing. We don't know. Now I'm trying not to like jump in with too many assumptions.
Sure.
And that's kind of like my main takeaway on this so far is like let's figure out what this is before we want to like project our politics onto it. But I think you're right that's like, regardless of what this is, like this is probably someone driven by like a bad situation or mental illness. Like it can be a thing that happens, and that's a tough thing to deal with on a macro level, and a micro level too, on an individual level of how do you get folks who are you know, in a bad spot and maybe about to do something reckless.
Sure. It's that. How do you save them? How do you prevent that? How do you save the other people that they're going to injure? I don't know. Like pre-crime, kind of that movie that
Yeah, right.
something like that. But those things are awkward. I do think that there is a stigma, no matter what, attached to people seeking mental health when they're in situations of depression. And guys, when you're in a situation of depression, sometimes it's really hard to realize it, right? So let's figure out like I think society's doing better about destigmatizing mental health issues, destigmatizing seeking counseling. So those things are good, but maybe we
Yeah.
haven't gone far enough, right? I don't
No,
know.
maybe not. No, that's definitely that's definitely part of it, right? It's like if that's what this turns out to be, again, who knows what it is, then yeah, that's something that's worth talking about. Like what happened here, or again, is it someone who is trying to just like act on an ideology? I don't know. So far, it doesn't seem like that, but like it could be still. Usually when that sort of thing happens, like there's more of a manifesto situation, which they
Sure.
haven't found, but yeah, no, it's like I said, it's just something like mostly I'm thinking about this in terms of, like, all right, we don't need a hot take on everything. Let's just slow down. It's tragic. At least a couple people died.
I think we're
And
free, Kevin, believe it or
oh
not.
well, three. Okay, there's the two victims in the car, in the Uber, and then the guy too, Michael Avery, also died. Um, and then several other people were injured. But anyway, on that, bummer, no, we do have to end the show. We're gonna keep talking though for a few minutes. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Have a great evening, folks. Take care. All right.
I don't even know if I should tell the story, but I have a hilarious story about one of Matt Driscoll's reelection campaigns. He was
Oh
like
yeah.
a city councilman, and he had somebody running against him, and like he was a Democrat then, and then they. I don't know if I should tell it, but I don't care. Him and his competitor got to a massive brawl, and his brother got his arm broken, and like it made the news, and he ended up losing that reelection campaign. It was just like typical Irish bar stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh, damn.
But he came back, like, and he made it back. He made it all. He climbed the political ladder. Like he was the mayor of Syracuse, I think 3 terms, 2 terms, something like that. Wildly popular guy, and like I said, genuinely a wonderful human being. Like really, and typical Irish. Typical Irish. It was great. He wasn't the brawler. His brother was. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, right.
But he's
Uh,
like he's gonna stand
but
up for his brother.
yeah,
So
fair enough, man.
yeah. And look, I think we should talk about a little bit just to preload our show when we get really on the subject. I don't know if people have noticed, but tax foreclosure has been a big issue, guys, and it's been a big issue that we've talked about on this show a number of times, and what they should do with the excess proceeds. Um, I want people to know though that in Minnesota, like Minnesota makes New York look like we're already kind. Like Minnesota takes property from people and then manages it and sells timber off of it and sells like uh,
Oh, so they
other
just
other mineral rights off of it. Like they're amazing. Like they do massive amounts of business, millions of dollars a year. St. Louis County in Minnesota does millions of dollars a year worth of business off of property that they've stolen from people. They'll steal property off of people for as little as $1,500. They do not care. So at the heart of this, there's this ruling. Anyway, they
yeah,
stole
no,
a lady.
the headline you said me though is like kind of wild though, because Minnesota counties stand to lose millions after Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
millions of dollars that they are profiting from stolen land. Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what they're going to lose money. Because they're they were making like St. Louis County was making like $500,000 a year off of selling timber and mineral rights off of all of the property that they've confiscated. And the poor tax accountant that they have is like, well, I had to take that number down to zero because we don't know what we're going to be able to do with that money. We may have to pay people back for all the excess proceeds that we've stolen over the years. For shame. Like I
Oh
feel
no.
bad for St. Louis County.
Yeah.
Not
No,
pay them
I
back.
know. Yeah, and so this is related to the Supreme Court ruling we had talked about earlier this year, related to the woman who had her home seized,
Yes.
and then the county sold it because she had owed like $15,000 on unpaid taxes, but they sold it for like $40,000, so they ended up having to pay her the excess, right? And so that's all it does. Like the county can still take your land, but like they just have to pay you for the amount they sell it for, right? Like anything above taxes that you owe, which I think is fair.
Well, okay, look, there is not. I'm not that crazy libertarian that says we can't take property for, like there's a pragmatic nature here that we have to discuss, which I kind of hate, but there's a reality, right? But let's start with that Tyler versus Hennepin case. The original tax bill that she had screwed up on was like $2,300. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And because of fees and penalties, it became $15,000. And at some point, some government lawyer had the nerve to argue that like taking her property over that $2,300 would have caused a greater harm to the community than letting her keep her property, and working out a payment plan for that $2,300, or it got to be usury, right? It was within a year, it went from $2,300 to $15,000, and
right, suddenly the fees skyrocket and everything jumps up, and
in the article that I shared, there's a guy that was on the hook for $1,500 for former pasture land. They took that, sold it for $33,000, and they gave him nothing. And our friend Robert Forrest was $20,000 in arrears. They sold his in New York State. They sold his property for in excess of $40,000, and he got nothing. And I think that's. I want to use the word evil, but I'm basically a religious, right? So it's still the word evil fits there, right? To balance your budget off of the stealing property from human beings is disgusting.
Yeah,
I'm going to stand by that.
And doing it from like the people who are like having a bad time, right? Like, because I mean, like most of these folks, they're not like mustache twirling millionaires who just don't feel like paying taxes. There's someone who like got in a bad situation. Maybe they were hospitalized for a long time. Because this happened to folks that I know, right? Like, one person I know who's like had serious medical problems and was hospitalized for a long time, and like that thought she had other family members paying for it, and suddenly like she owes thousands of dollars in taxes. And luckily, like she was able to get some help and like figure it out a bit, but like, man, a lot of people they just lose their homes.
Yeah,
right. And then to add insult to injury, right? Like it's also like you're gonna sell that, make a profit off of it, and like you can't even like get the profit out. You taken beyond what you like needed, what was owed. Why? Again, other than like greed, and like
it's greed.
Okay, we gotta fill our government coffers with like the proceeds of stolen property. It's messed up.
Yeah, and Shelley's one that experienced it as well, right? $1,200 for a $300,000 house that was foreclosed for $30,000 that are ex. So like, there's so many problems with the legal system. It's ridiculous. Kevin, at the end of 2024, according to our eye in the sky and our feet on the ground, Patricia Blanchard, New York State will ban pet stores from selling dogs, cats, and rabbits.
Oh yeah. That is, well, it's a thing because they're trying to cut down on. I mean, it's not really gonna work.
No, it can't work.
But like they're trying to cut down on like puppy mill type of situations.
Black market puppies, black market rabbits. I can't wait.
Well, like, yeah, I mean that's the thing. Is like you can, it makes it illegal for pet stores to do this. Which like a lot of pet stores are not great.
Sure.
I care about animal welfare, but a lot of pet stores are not great. They're getting puppies from places that aren't great. But the thing is, like, yeah, it's not going to totally fix the problem because you can still have like breeders, some of whom are very responsible. They breed in sanitary conditions. They they check like genetic lines, all that stuff. Other folks, they're just mixing puppies together and not taking care of
Making
them, not feeding
paperwork.
them.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still not great. But like the goal was supposed to be like we adopt more out of shelters, but
Yeah.
so it's one of those like
They
things.
pet stores can still act as a source of shelters according to the law, right? Like
Yeah, right.
as a source of adoption agency kind of thing. They can still make money off of the process. So we'll
Yeah, and so
see.
yeah, that's what like there's was it Pet Saver that does it around here? Like I think they're like a source of adoption for Lollipop. I think they're still doing that, but they were at one point.
So you can still get chinchillas, I guess.
Chinchillas.
According, like I don't know what's specifically mentioned in the law. That was well played,
Yeah,
though, Kelly.
maybe. Probably still
Maybe,
get fish, but
maybe.
yeah. But anyway, I think I'm gonna call it a night because
All right, brother.
yeah, good night.
We got to edit this thing, and you know,
Yep,
you guys don't
yep,
forget you can listen on Spotify, and you can share our Spotify channel. I don't know
yeah.
is it a channel with your friends so that they can listen to Tim and Kevin, and yeah, and we'd appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Subscribe. If you only caught part of this episode, make sure you go and listen there too. I'll share the profile link in the comments, and you can go check it out. Spread the word, and spread a little freedom.
Yeah, spread a little freedom. It's good. Like, obviously, the mainstream media is collapsing on itself. So, you have a great night too, Shelly.
Yeah. Good night. Thanks,
Thanks.
John. John says another great show, guys. Appreciate it, folks. All right. Have a good night. Bye.